My husband didn't know I spoke Japanese. It wasn't a secret I kept on purpose. It was simply a part of my past that never came up, never mattered, until the night it shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage. We were invited to a formal dinner hosted by one of his company's foreign partners. The restaurant was expensive, quiet, polished. Crystal glasses, soft music, polite smiles. I sat beside him like I always did, composed, quiet, supportive. At the table were several guests, including 2 Japanese executives. They spoke English fluently, but when they turned to each other, they switched naturally into Japanese. No one else noticed. I did. As the evening went on, my husband grew more confident. He drank more wine. He laughed louder. He began performing, the charming businessman, the successful man with the obedient wife. At one point, he leaned toward the Japanese guests and tried to speak their language. His pronunciation was clumsy, but they smiled politely. Then he laughed and said in English, relaxed and careless, "She doesn't understand any of this anyway." My body went still. One of the Japanese men replied in Japanese, his voice calm. "She seems very quiet," he said. "Does she always let you speak for her?" My husband chuckled. "She's sweet," he said. "But she's not very smart. I handle the thinking." The words landed like a slow burn. They continued, talking about me, about how dependent I was, about how lucky I was, about how I wouldn't survive without him. Then he said it. She'd be nothing without my name. I felt something inside me crack, not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. I excused myself and went to the restroom. I looked at my reflection and barely recognized the woman staring back. She didn't look weak. She looked invisible. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I understood something very clearly. The man I trusted felt powerful only because he believed I was ignorant. And that night, I decided I would not correct him yet. I would listen, I would learn, and I would choose the moment when silence stopped protecting me. I returned to the table with the same calm smile on my face. No one noticed the storm inside me. That was the most painful part, how easy it was for them not to see. My husband refilled his glass, relaxed, confident. The Japanese executives continued speaking among themselves, assuming I remained unaware. And my husband, freed by that assumption, kept talking. "She's easy," he said lightly. "No drama, no opinions. That's why our marriage works." One of the Japanese women hesitated before responding. "In Japan," she said carefully in Japanese, "silence does not always mean emptiness. Sometimes it means endurance." My husband laughed, misunderstanding both the language and the warning. I understood everything. In that moment, I realized something sharp and undeniable. He didn't love my silence. He depended on it. The dinner ended shortly after. As we stood to leave, he placed his hand on my back, guiding me like an object he owned. I followed without resistance. In the car, he was pleased with himself. "You were great tonight," he said. "Very elegant. They liked you." I looked out the window at the passing lights. "I'm glad," I replied quietly. That night, after he fell asleep, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop. I went through old files, certificates, emails, notes from years ago. Proof of a woman who had studied, struggled, learned. A woman who spoke another language fluently while the world assumed she was simple. I remembered the hours I spent learning Japanese when no one believed I could. The exams I passed. The confidence I once had. I wasn't stupid. I had just learned how to survive. Over the next weeks, I listened more than ever. At dinners, at meetings, at home, my husband spoke freely because he believed I was incapable of understanding complexity. And every time he underestimated me, he revealed more, about his business, his deals, his shortcuts, his lies. Every night, I wrote things down. Not out of anger, out of clarity. I wasn't planning revenge. I was preparing truth, because silence had protected me long enough. But soon, it would no longer be necessary. The more I listened, the clearer everything became. My husband talked when he felt safe. And he felt safest when he believed I was unaware. At home, he spoke openly on phone calls, pacing the living room while I sat nearby, reading or cooking. He never lowered his voice. Never locked his screen. Never considered that I might understand more than he wanted. He told people I was simple. He told people I was grateful. He told people I was dependent. And because he believed those things, he revealed everything. He talked about cutting corners. About deals made on trust alone. About favors exchanged quietly. About people he believed would never speak. I wrote it all down. Dates, names, amounts. Not because I wanted to destroy him, but because I finally understood something important. Love does not require ignorance. Respect does not fear intelligence. One evening, weeks later, he invited the same Japanese executives to our home for dinner. This time, he said proudly, "You can show them your cooking." I smiled. I cooked carefully, served gracefully, listened silently. The conversation shifted into Japanese again. They spoke about partnerships, about ethics, about how fragile reputation truly is. One of the men said, quietly, "A man often reveals his true self at home." My husband laughed, sipping his wine. "She won't understand that," he said in English. "She's not part of this world." That was the moment. I placed my fork down gently. "I understand," I said, clearly, fluently, in Japanese. The silence was immediate and absolute. My husband froze. The guests stared at me, stunned. I continued calmly. "I've understood everything for a long time," I said. "Including what you've said about me. And what you've said about your business." My husband's face drained of color. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't shaking. I was calm. Because power doesn't need volume. I turned to the guests. "Thank you for your honesty," I said. "I believe transparency matters." No one spoke. The dinner ended quickly after that. Later that night, my husband finally asked the question he should have asked years ago. "How long have you known?" He whispered. "All along," I replied. And in that moment, I watched the foundation of his certainty collapse. Because the woman he thought was silent had been listening the entire time. I didn't leave in anger. I left in clarity. There was no dramatic argument, no slammed doors, no raised voices. Just a quiet morning when I packed my essentials, folded my clothes carefully, and placed my wedding ring on the kitchen table. When he woke up and saw it, his face crumbled. "You're really doing this?" he asked. I nodded. "I already did," I said. "I just needed you to notice." He tried to speak. Apologies tangled with fear, but words that come after years of silence arrived too late. I moved into a small apartment. Nothing fancy, but for the first time, every sound inside it belonged to me. My thoughts were loud again. My laughter returned without permission. The Japanese executives pulled out of the deal months later. Quietly, professionally. Reputation has a way of correcting itself when truth is finally seen. He never accused me. He knew better. I rebuilt my life slowly. Took on work that valued precision, language, understanding. My Japanese, once hidden, became my bridge, my strength, my income. One evening, months later, I ran into him by chance. He looked smaller, not because he failed, but because I was no longer standing in his shadow. "You were always smarter than I thought," he said softly. I smiled. "No," I replied. "I was always smart. You just didn't listen." I walked away feeling light. Because the greatest revenge wasn't exposure. It was becoming fully visible, to myself. And I learned this. Never underestimate silence. Sometimes it's not weakness. Sometimes